Welcome to the PowettPlay Podcast, where international cricketer Kieran, Powell and marketing genius Shannon join forces, bringing you captivating conversations with the biggest players in cricket and business. Join us as we dive into the lives of current stars in the cricketing world, the legends before them, and those extraordinary icons whose performances changed the game in both cricket and business. Exploring journeys both on and off the pitch, the boardroom, and everything in between. Get ready for an exhilarating blend of cricket, life, and business insights, with two insatiably passionate, infuriatingly no-holds-barred hosts, who, unfortunately for the rest of us, live and breathe this stuff for a living.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 39 of the PowettPlay Podcast. I'm your host Jordan Shannon, and as always I'm joined by my co-host Kieran Powell. How are you, Kai?
I'm good, Jordan. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Good couple of performances from England, the last couple of test matches against obviously the West Indies, but I really want to start by talking about the second test, really, because I think that, well, in my opinion anyway, I think the West Indies let an opportunity slip a little bit there, to be honest with
you. Yeah, 100%. I think obviously bowling first on what is historically known as quite a batting friendly track, but still being able to take a first innings lead at the end of I think that they would have fought really hard to get into that position. I think definitely the game started to slip away on the third day's afternoon session, last session of the day, when they bowled, and it just sort of ran away with that Root and Harry Brook partnership.
Yeah,
I think that obviously, the bowlers would have probably toiled for a long time throughout the course of the game. Really, it's really benign services, really good batting track. The outfield was extremely fast. Beautiful weather throughout the entirety of the Test match, which was surprised being a Test match held in England. It was almost like the weather of a Test match held in the Caribbean. So I think that everything sort of worked to the West Indies' advantage. But obviously, I'd say probably a bit of fatigue and more so inexperience played a part in the second innings of the West Indies batting. I mean, people are going to say they collapse, it's not good enough, etc., a million other things. But the realities of the situation are that the rest of the batting group, I mean, I'm not counting Jason as a number 6. The rest of the back group outside of Craig have played 20 test matches. What are we talking about, ultimately? So that's sort of, I guess, a two-headed coin where you will have days where you have performances of 457 and a first innings lead, but you'll also have to take the rough with the smooth where you have a situation where you get bowled out in a session as well.
Yeah, I just think that with what you mentioned there about the first innings lead, I think from my perspective anyway, watching the game, I felt that the momentum was with the West Indies. So the onslaught from Shamar Joseph and the partnership with Joshua Da Silva, obviously it gave them that lead, but ultimately it just sort of changed the momentum of the game a little bit. And I think that I know you mentioned in the pod with Mr. Coley, Andre Coley, you said about tell Alzari to bowl his Leeward Island length. And I think that opportunity then, soon as they come out, he needed to hit his length and get it right. And I just didn't feel that the bowlers got the length and the line right, and it just allowed England to then change that momentum swing straight away. And it was quite clear because Sky Sports do this, I can't remember what they call it now. So it sort of gives you a percentage of the likely winners. So I think as the first innings finished for the West Indies, I think the West Indies were 56%, or it might have even been higher, might have been even later. And then within about 10 overs of the England second innings, it sort of flipped completely, where England 65% likely to win the game. And it's those little small margins, even though, like we've discussed before loads of times about it being it's a test match, it's 4 days worth of cricket and the like. It was just those 10 overs either side of the first innings of the West Indies and the first 10 innings for England, where the game momentum just was switching, and it just felt like I felt like that's that game, that's that moment when the West Indies let it slip and the bowlers just didn't quite get it right.
It's interesting that because you've seen lots of people talk about the plans or what the plans may be in the post-match interviews and stuff. Lots of people mentioning there were extended periods of time where they were deep backward square leg, but the guys were bowling full outside off stumps. So that was sort of a wasted fielder and things like that. So, I mean, that's something that I guess comes down to the captain and his bowlers and whatever the cross in terms of communication or really identifying where you're trying to get the batters out needs to happen there. But I think, Jaden Seals, for example, got 4 wickets, but I wouldn't say he necessarily bowled well.
No.
If you look at it, like obviously he was off to an expensive start in both innings. He sort of cleaned up the tail, and so the figures look a lot better than what they really were.
Yeah.
But I think that it's going to be important that the West Indies, I guess, try and have better stats, not just with the new ball, but I'd say every bowler coming into their spell. I think the loss of Gurukesh Moti for the Test match was a huge thing.
Massive.
But I also think that the tactics that they're using at the moment. So what I'd like to see is for them to probably bowl a bit straighter. So instead of bowling maybe a 4th, 5th stump, I'd say maybe bowl middle and off, attack the stumps a bit more on a fuller length, set the field straighter. So you have like straight mid on, mid off. You can let them hang back a bit. Extra cover and mid wicket a bit straighter as well. So you're forcing the batters to hit
to come
straight up, present face. And if there's any lateral movement, then you bring your slips and your gully into play as opposed to attacking that sort of 4th, 5th stump length and you're getting hit through cover and your man in the deep backward point boundary is not able to get around and stop it anyway. So that's the change that I'd like to see personally. I think that sort of stand the West Indies in a better stead because you look at it right now, everyone's sort of bowling more on a defensive length or more of a one-day type length, which is expected because most you look at a Jason, for example, that got 1 wicket in the Test match and hasn't really been effective or penetrative at all throughout the series. You look at an Alzari who's been playing white ball cricket for the past 7 months. And then you hear people saying things like he's not evolving or he's not leading the attack. I definitely know that is not the case. He's literally just been playing on white ball cricket. So he can't come and transform and bowl that fuller length because in white ball cricket, that's not the length you bowl. So, it's just things like that I think are more so affecting the West Indies because you see that as the West Indies go on throughout a series where they didn't have much preparation, they always get better. You look at when they went to Australia, they prepared, they went to Australia for like 3 weeks beforehand. Mm-hmm. And so once they lost that first test, you could see that they were getting better and they went on to win that second Test match. The same thing with the T20 World Cup squad. They prepared extensively before that T20 World Cup. They had a series against South Africa before that World Cup. And so you saw a chain of events that led to more consistent performance.
Yeah,
exactly. So I think more so than anything, it's the pre-series preparation because first class cricket in the Caribbean finished quite some time ago. And for me, I would have liked to have seen either for the West Indies board to reach out to counties and say, look, these guys are contracted. I don't need you to pay them. I just need them to have opportunities to play. Or they reach out to club teams. Or if that's not possible, either of those two, I would have liked to have seen them, instead of guys preparing in their respective islands leading up to the tour, I would have loved to see, whilst the T20 World Cup is on, these guys come to the headquarters in Antigua and be practicing being drilled on green, slow English type services as much as you possibly can in terms of simulating what you will get with brand new Duke's balls, having it seam about for 3 weeks to a month. So by the time they got to England, at least, they would be mentally prepared more so than guys working respectively at home. So I think that's what's been ailing West Indies more than anything, preparation.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, I know you mentioned it there about Alzari and obviously you spoke about, I said before about the length that you wanted him to bowl at. And I think you can see the same with Shamar Joseph. He looks he doesn't look match fit in terms of, obviously, from that Test cricket perspective, because if he didn't feature particularly strongly in the IPL, so he's been out there, and obviously then the T20 World Cup, but bowling 4 overs at a time, in terms of, obviously, regardless of plans, like you mentioned, it's a completely different lengths and stuff. He's still bowling 4 overs max. There's not that overs under his, in his legs in terms of having to go and do the hard yards, which ultimately Test cricket provides, especially when you're bowling at the likes of Joe Root and Harry Brook, when, that's tough. The way that Joe Root's batting at the minute, it's, he's showing why he's, up there with the very, very best at this moment in time. So it's a tough ask. And I think one of the points that you made there about, missing Gudakesh Motu would be massive, because he give you that ability to try and end up, go at, 2.5 and over. Even though, obviously, I don't think, but even though Shoaib Bashir got the 5 towards the end on Sunday, I don't think particularly was conducive to spin. It wasn't really turning too much, but he still gives you that sort of, allows you to rotate a bit more and stuff like that, really.
Yeah, and I mean, Gudakesh Motu to me is probably as important in terms of wicket-taking ability options for the West Indies as the seam bowlers. You saw those 2 balls that he bowled at Lords to get Stokes and Joe Root out. Yeah, those were 2 unplayable deliveries. Yeah. And so this pitch was a lot drier. Obviously, it wasn't spinning as much, but a good spinner will be able to extract turn from any surface. And so I just think that he would be able to, whether it be chipping with 2-3 wickets, but as you said, provide that level of control as well.
Yeah.
From one end, allowing you to rotate the other bowlers and have them to come in a lot more aggressively for the length of their spell, knowing that it's not going to be a 6-7 over spell, but you can attack for 3-4 overs, take a break, and come back.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and that's the thing, is that you mentioned in the first Test, obviously having the bowling that wicket taking deliveries against Stokes and Root. Who was to say that if he was in that second Test or in that partnership very early on with Root and Brook, he didn't have the ability to go and rip both of them out, because especially with being a left armer to a right hander, he's going to bring the outside edge into play a lot more. So I'd like to see that's Test cricket, is the nature of the thing. The player's going to get injured and pick up bits and pieces, so that's going to change. But touching on the batting, I think we spoke about it before, and you said it at the start in terms of, obviously, Jason Holder batting at 6. It just seems to be lacking that experience in terms of, once Craig gets out effectively. I was really impressed with Mikhail Lewis at the top of the order. I thought he showed some real sort of character in terms of the way that Mark Wood was bowling and stuff, and I thought he looked in superb order. It's just a tough, he got out to a good delivery, and that happens. But from an opener's perspective, how did you sort of perceive how he came across?
It was interesting. Sort of twofold for me. Obviously, he's gotten a start in all 4 innings, which is obviously heartening for him coming into Test cricket. He would definitely want to and need to sort of capitalize on those starts, because you look at it, there's been, I think, maybe 2 of the 4, if not 3 of the 4 innings have been half-century opening stand partnerships. So that's definitely, you're setting a foundation, you're laying a platform where your middle order are not exposed to the new ball. You're sort of batting until at least the first hour of the day's play. So you're doing all the hard graft, but from a personal perspective and from a position in the team perspective as well, you sort of want to put in that performance that makes you feel as though, okay, I do belong here at this level. There's a new player, a young player coming into the team. You want to sort of give yourself that reassurance that, you are good enough. So I think for him going into this next Test match, because looking at the first innings he played, it was very enterprising, very attacking, entertaining, that 20-something he got at Lords. But then from since that, he's sort of been getting bogged down when you look at him batting. Like, it's been 13 off of 40, 17 off 50-something. So he's not rotating the strike as much. And that's where playing international cricket, teams see you, teams figure you out quickly, teams come up with different methods of bowling to you and attacking you. And so now he has to think quickly and change stuff quickly as well, because playing at this level is a lot different than playing at regional level. So, I mean, very smart guy,
Right.
very educated guy, should probably be studying some sort of sciences at university because he's that type of guy. So it's just for him to sit and really analyze. Okay, this is what's been happening. I'm getting start. I'm getting through the new ball, and it's just to capitalize and let's try and bat 2 hours this time. We're getting to 1 hour. Let's get to the 2 hour, get to lunch and start again.
Yeah, I think that you mentioned there about this rotation of the strike. I was so impressed with Joe Root's 100. Don't get me wrong, the way he plays cricket is just superb to watch anyway. It's brilliant. But the way he rotated the strike were brilliant. For him to score 100, only scoring 7 boundaries, and the way that he just kept rotating, I think that, that's a real big takeaway for some of the top order for the West Indies to pick up on, is the way that he manoeuvred that, and constantly sort of, from their perspective, maybe that's why it worked in terms of they couldn't really set plans or feels, because he just kept, maybe that's obviously the skill set that he's got. He's got the ability to be able to manoeuvre the ball, pretty much 360 really, as we've seen at times. But I think that what you were saying there in terms of, obviously from Lou's perspective, I suppose that he needs to somehow work a way of trying to rotate the strike and stuff. And hopefully that's what we see in the third test, because there has been that, like you said, you mentioned before about the preparation. There has been obviously positives, and they've gained it. And hopefully now they finish this series, pushing England all the way. And then, if not, picking up a win, which would be massive going into the series against South Africa back on home soil.
I just think that, as I identified in the call with Andre Coley last week, I think that this England team can be had. Like, you're talking about a very experienced bowling attack. Take away Jimmy Anderson from that attack and you're seeing gaping holes. Yeah. Mark Wood is indeed bowling the speed of light, but he also got very few wickets in the game. He went past the bat quite a few times, which is obviously, I guess, a moral reward for him. Had a catch dropped from Kavim Hodge off by Joe Root, which could have potentially took his innings around as well. But the West Indies showed that they were able to stick through that. And I think that was probably the most threatening part of England's bowling attack. Gus Atkinson didn't look anywhere near as penetrating this week as he did last week. And I think that for the West Indies, the main thing would be keep the bowlers coming back. Just keep them coming, like getting them into their third, fourth, fifth spells, getting them into day two after lunch, just keep wearing them down. That will sort of be the mindset that I would have if I were this West Indies team, because obviously they don't have experienced team to go like for like with Australia, with England, and say, all right, we're also gonna smash you off the park. Yeah. So you've seen from the England perspective as well, understanding that the bowling attack is inexperienced. The batting has reined itself in considerably compared to the past 12 to 18 months. Yeah. They're playing a lot more of what is deemed a traditional form of cricket with their batting. You're not seeing guys scoring 150 or 160 off 100 balls, anything like that. So you know that you're going to be in the game. If you can take catches, which West Indies didn't feel well at all, if you can take catches, create opportunities, then you have an opportunity to win the game. It's just up to them to hold on to those opportunities when they come in the field. As I said, I think that major adjustment would be the line and the length for the bowlers to try and maximize, all right, if it is doing something, we can bring the edges into play. If it's not, we're attacking the stumps, so we bring LBW and bold into the equation as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's quite interesting, the point you made there, and I'll revert back to England a bit, is this hole that Anderson has left. I think it's sort of, there was with him obviously announcing that he was going to be finishing after this test match anyway, I feel as though that the actual talk of someone standing in for him has not really been highlighted as much, because I think everyone keeps talking everything over here at this moment in time, and it always refers back to going back to Australia in 2025. We need pace, we need this, we need that. But at the same time, it's okay for Mark Wood to be bowling 97 mile an hour and it becoming a massive hype, and all over social media you see this delivery and, wow, what, and this and that. If you can't bowl, the best part of 16 to 20 overs consistently, then it's kind of irrelevant how fast he bowls one delivery. Yes, his spell at that period of time was quick, no doubt in that, and it'll be fantastic in Australia. But we can't just earmark Australia as when we've got to keep working and keep figuring something out. Going to Australia with Mark Wood bowling like that, and then having 2 or 3. I'm not saying that Gus Atkinson's could potentially a weak link. I can't see Chris Woakes going as well. But it can't just be relying on this quick and bowling as quick as we can in Australia. It doesn't work. They've been brought up on pace and bounce.
I'll tell you what I find interesting. And I was having a chat with my coach today, John Maynard, who was someone that bowled very quickly in his day. And Michael Atherton wrote in his autobiography, playing a tour match in St. Kitts, that was probably the quickest bowling he's faced.
Right, okay, wow.
He's faced some of the quickest, so that in itself was interesting. But I was saying to him, if Chris Woakes is 35, and Chris Woakes for probably, let's say, the past 10 years was being prepped to be Jimmy's replacement, I think that there is an argument to be had. Obviously, now Jimmy's retired, but I think that there was an argument to be had that England should have moved on from Chris Woakes because he won't be going to the Ashes next year.
Well,
so I think it would have been better served for England if they kept Jimmy throughout this summer and eased him out, phased him out throughout the winter next year. So you could say this was his last home summer, but he was a senior bowler to the Gus Atkinsons and the Penningtons and all the other bowlers that you're thinking about using, because obviously his experience is invaluable. You can have him on the field and he's still in and around the dressing room. And I think that would be a lot more valuable than having Chris Woakes there, who won't be going to the Ashes anyway. So neither of them will be to the Ashes.
No.
So I thought that in hindsight, would have been probably a better move for England, because Jimmy's still, if not the best, he's definitely within the best 3-4 fast bowlers that England can put out to play against any opposition at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so having him on the field, teaching guys in real time the discipline of how to look after your body on the field, how to back up a spell, how to back up an innings, how to get through a good spell, how to get through a bad spell, all these various things. I just think that they sort of, fumbled in that sense, because as you said, having someone going to Australia and bowling fast is completely fine. They grew up on fast bowling. That they love fast bowling, especially in Australian conditions where it's not fast and swinging, it's fast, and England don't do well with the kookaburra ball. That plays into their hands.
Correct.
So you need bowlers to be going out there, not just bowling quick, but bowling with some level of skill, whether it be seam movement, getting the ball to seam off the pitch, or whatever the case is, or else you're going to run into pretty much the same old issues in Australia as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think at the end of the day, that the Mark Wood thing again, and I'm sorry to bring Mark Wood back into it, I feel like I'm criticising, I'm genuinely not, but the 5 Test series in Australia, does he have the ability to play five Test matches over the space of 6 weeks? Maybe 6 or 7 weeks, because it's normally the last weekend in November and then all the way through to the second week in January. Has he got the ability to play 5 Test matches? I don't know. That's obviously something that the England staff will have to determine. But if he can't, you're then going to have to replace him, as well as replace Anderson, as well as replace potentially Woakes. Now, you're talking November 25, so you've got a year and 4 or 5 months. You've got a series away at Pakistan that is can be completely opposite to to Australia. You've got New Zealand, which is going to be like playing a home series over here, and then you've got next summer here, and then obviously Australia. There doesn't seem to be. Well, there's got to be some form of strategy here in place to try and get some other bowlers in to be playing Test cricket, because if they go with Dylan Pellington, Gus Atkinson, Matt Potts, and then you've got your Wopes at the minute, and then a spinner, they're going to need 2 or 3. They need to be, blooding a few more really as well, because you can't be fully reliant on that as well.
Yeah, I think you don't have to worry about that. You've seen England's schedule for the next 12 months. They won't have a choice but to blood people, or else they're going to be creating a bloodbath. They're going to kill someone. But it's unbelievable that they've actually signed off to play that much cricket. That's something unto its own. But I think that they'll take a big squad out to Australia. I think they'll probably be taking maybe up to 8 fast bowlers out to Australia.
Yeah.
You also have to remember that Jofra's going to go to Australia as well.
Of course. Yeah.
Work Jofra back into cricket next summer, into Test match cricket.
Yeah, fair point.
So between Jofra and Mark Wood, I think you have your extra space covered for maybe one will play 3 Test matches and the other will play 2, or maybe they'll both play 3 and intercept in 1 Test match.
Yeah.
It'll be just extremely quick bowling. But you'll have enough. But I don't see someone like Chris Woakes going. And then that's where you're trying to figure out who's going to be the leader of the attack then. Is it Gus Atkinson is going to be completely focused on Test cricket and they're going to try and get him up to speed between now and then, get 20, 25 Test matches under his belt going into the Ashes series. An Ashes series away in Australia is completely different to an Ashes series in England.
Yeah.
And we know the purpose of what that brings. England hasn't won a Test match in Australia for almost my entirety of being alive. So it's been some time. And so it's interesting, the composition of the fast bowling unit that they do go with, because there is no safety blanket of Stuart Broad, of Jimmy Anderson.
That's it. I was going to say, yeah.
That 1,300 wickets between them. So, I mean, but this is a good thing, I mean, in life, like anything else, when opportunities like this happen, there's always someone that grabs it. So it's going to be interesting to see who eventually comes out as the new face of fast bowling.
No, definitely. I know we touched on it a little bit then. What did you actually make of that schedule that England produced, that was sent out?
I think it's horrific. The talk about player management, workload management, all this, and I had to go through the schedule maybe 3-4 times before I could find a gap where there was like a month without any cricket.
Yeah.
And so England's schedule is generally pretty packed on a normal basis.
Yeah.
You look at this, you've got the West Indies tour in England twice next summer.
I don't get that.
I completely could not understand what that was about. So you're going to have to go there for 3 ODI series
in June,
and then come back a few weeks later for a 3 T20I series, which makes no sense at all.
No,
but it's just the nature of the schedule. It's so packed that they're just fitting in things as and when they can. And so I think what you're going to see over the next 18 months with England cricket is a lot of guys actually having to specialize in the formats that they're looking to play. You're definitely not going to see any 3 format players, because literally they just can't. And I think what you'll see is like the new up and coming mold or wave of T20 players from England taking over that facet of the game. Obviously, you've got someone like Ben Stokes that's retired from Test and T20 cricket internationally. So he just has to focus. One day in T20 cricket. So he just has to focus on Test and obviously plays franchise stuff. Joe Root's still playing ODI cricket, probably going to try and get to the Champions Trophy, and then maybe he calls that. And then just focus on Test cricket and play some franchise stuff as and when there's not much cricket happening for him. But the guys like Harry Brook, who I think would be amazing all-format cricketers, are literally going to just have to focus on what England has as primary targets at the moment, which for me is interesting, because I think if anyone is in line to replace Jos Buttler as captain, if they want to do so, I would be looking at Harry Brook.
Yeah. But
Harry Brook is an integral part of the Test team and probably going to be in line to be the next England captain by the time by the time
No.
Ben Stokes is finished as well.
Mm.
So he'll probably be the one person that can be an all-format captain, given his exploits in each format of the game. But
No way
the scheduling won't allow for that. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because England's calendar now is more packed than India's calendar, which
say something.
You look at the amount of players that India uses on a yearly basis just to get through their calendar. England are going to really be stretched thin and far in their resources of getting through this next 18 months.
I want to ask you quickly then, you mentioned about Jofra, obviously potentially, well, he should, his aim's going to be the Ashes away. I don't want to go back over that, but how do you think he will fit into a schedule that, for someone who's predominantly played white ball, more so for England anyway, but the aim really is being, in going down under to Australia?
Well, I think Rob Key mentioned in Jofra's comeback that they've got a very detailed plan, and you heard some of the interviews Jofra did as well out in the Caribbean from the World Cup. I think he said he was ready to go from last November, but it's just they kept him on ice, kept him wrapped in cotton wool just so that nothing happened. And he was, to me, probably, along with Adil Rashid, hands down England's best two bowlers at that T20 World Cup. So the impact that he has on English cricket has been profound. When he came into that Ashes series, he completely changed it. Obviously, his pace, his aggression, being able to disrupt what still ended up to be a 700-run 4-match series for Steve Smith. Thank God. So I think someone like Jofra, they're probably just going to keep him exclusively white ball until the Champions Trophy next year.
Right.
And
okay.
after that, I think that they're going to probably ease him out of white ball stuff and probably slowly load him up throughout the English summer with a few test matches in preparation for the Ashes series.
Yeah, would make sense. I just wanted to quickly ask you mentioned there about India. How do you think they'll get on with life in the T20 stuff without Virat and Rohit Sharma and Jadeja?
Life has to go on. That's the nature of sport. That's the nature of business. That's the nature of human existence. Life has to go on. We had the Sachin Tendulkars, the Sunil Gavaskars, all these people previously. These two guys, what they've meant for this generation, and Ravindra Jadeja as well, what they've meant for this generation of the Indian cricket team, the Indian cricket fans, is equivalent to those names that I mentioned of previous generations as well. And so to have, I guess, three of them leaving at the same time obviously leaves a gaping hole, not only in terms of ability, performances, but leadership and know-how. Understanding situations, handling pressure, getting through those big moments. And I think that, for me, India definitely got it right when they made Rohit captain. I know it was controversial back then when they took it from Virat, but you allowed the best player to be the best player. And Virat went and didn't have the greatest World Cup, but when it mattered most, that's when Virat was Virat. And that's when everybody knew that Virat would be Virat. And then Rohit's tactical nuances allowed for him to maneuver the game situation in a way that allowed South Africa to crumble in a situation where they would think that they should be winning a game 30 of 30, 9 out of 10 times of the other day of the week. So they're going to have to find and give opportunities to guys. Obviously, you've got ready-made options in Shubman Gill, Ishan Kishan, you've got Jaiswal, and a host of other guys playing in the IPL and domestic cricket. They don't have the level of experience right now as is expected. They're much younger guys. They haven't played half as much or quarter as much of cricket. But they've got the talent and they've shown that. So it's just to expose them, continue to give them opportunities. India plays more than enough cricket for them to get enough opportunities. I think it's interesting that they've gone for Surya Kumar as captain instead of Hardik. citing Hardick's injury history.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means for Hardick and how he'll take it as well personally, because obviously each person has, their own ambitions, their own ego and all these other things. And, he would have probably seen it as, he's been vice captain for some time. He was actually in the debate to be captain of this World Cup until the BCCI chose to confirm Rohit as captain. So it's going to be interesting going forward. But Indian cricket, with the resources that they have, KL Rahul wasn't at the World Cup, Shubman Gill wasn't at the World Cup, they'll be fine.
No, definitely. I think as well, the way that they've timed it's a nice thing in the way of it's given them plenty of time before the next World Cup to then get the plans in place. And I don't think Hardick, there's still obviously an opportunity for him to possibly take over captaincy down the line, depending on how it goes and stuff. But, they play more, like you said, they play enough T20 cricket franchise-wise, obviously, as well, but also in terms of from an Indian perspective to figure out, and it just gives the opportunity. And also a lot of the play inside have played a lot of cricket with Rohit and with Virat, to take the positives of how they go about stuff and things. So the impact that they would have left will be massive as well. So I think that the series against Sri Lanka will be positive from that perspective, and they'll get the new regime underway, and they'll take it from there. Because either way, even if to be a World Cup now with the current squad, you wouldn't write them off. But especially getting that top four and then potentially win it as well because of the quality that they've got and the strength in depth as well. So
I think what's interesting for me as well, this is another point that I was just thinking about. It's all happening within the Mumbai Indians, isn't it? Because Rohit was captain, they brought back Hardik and made him captain, and now India has elevated Suryakumar Yadav to captaincy. So does that mean that when the IPL comes around again, Rohit obviously won't be captain anymore because he's retired from Indian international cricket? But what happens in that situation between Hardik and Sky as well? So that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well. So that's going to
definitely. But obviously the Major League is fully underway. I think some of the Australians are definitely doing their thing over there. Have you managed to watch much of it?
Because of time zones, obviously, I can't necessarily watch it when it's happening. Sort of the matches are on around the time, because I generally fall asleep maybe at 4 or 5 in the morning here, and wake up again by 9, 10. Get Emma nudging me, sleep at night and wake up. So that's funny. But the Australians have actually been doing really well. But I think what I've found even more so interesting, so Pat Cummins put out an article, obviously stating he's not in the slightest interested in playing the 100 and why he chose the Major League. And obviously his team owners are VC fund guys in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And that's something that he wanted to get involved in the future. And so he seeked out this opportunity exclusively because of that. And I think that was really cool, because I think that, these are obviously, Emma and I, and these are the conversations we sort of have.
Yeah.
And I think it's nice to see cricketers have these conversations throughout different countries. I know these are not conversations that are, I guess, necessarily had that much in the Caribbean, and these are things that we'd like to sort of help to implement change on from the Caribbean player perspective, and setting up life after cricket, etc., and understanding how to do so. But I think that was very interesting, because if you look at Steve Smith, he's got an interesting investment portfolio, and he spends quite a bit of time in the US as well.
Yeah.
And so does David Warner in terms of an investment portfolio. So these guys have set themselves up outside of cricket. And I mean, if you're talking about investing in Silicon Valley, that's where the biggest and the best tech companies are birthed, and sort of the best tech ecosystem is. So understanding the opportunities of Major League, yes, you go and play cricket, you have a good time. Everyone loves being in America, but just thinking on a bigger, more holistic scale, I think that was very interesting.
No, I think it was good to hear, because a lot of people, like you said, would have probably like, why is he chose to go in there rather than come to play in the 100? But when you strip it back, it's investing in his future. And sometimes, it's not all about playing in a the higher profile franchise tournaments. Probably, he probably would have gained a better wage potentially from playing in the 100 than in the major league. It's about obviously, that self-education perspective. And he's, I'm glad he come out and said stuff like that, because it's good for people to hear. Good for people to read really as well, because, you mentioned there about life after cricket and stuff, but from a fan perspective at times it's something that can be completely an oversight really. So for him to sort of go and make that statement and stuff, I think it's good. And like you said there with Steve Smith and David Warner, these people have got the good business portfolios out there, and it's good to see that. And what you'll probably find is that next generation that come through from Australia will also then obviously follow the same sort of path and be introduced to the same sort of people who can help them down the line, which ultimately is going to secure their futures as well. Because the more franchise cricket that comes, etc., you meet these sort of business-minded people, you're only going to self-educate yourself more and help yourself secure that future after cricket.
Well, I think one thing that we're not bearing in mind here as well is the tax rate in England, which would have absolutely smashed whatever you make.
Well, yeah.
But I think for a host of reasons as well, it's a lot more appealing for the Australians to go to America, isn't it? In terms of getting there from most of these, like you're talking about the Steve Smith, the Pat Cummins, all of these guys are not just teammates, but they're all from New South Wales, and it's I think only a 12-hour flight to Sydney from LA, as opposed to 24 hours to London, isn't it? So it's a lot easier in terms of being more efficient in terms of travel. Yeah. And as you said, as people sometimes forget, like, yes, athletes, cricketers in this instance are providing entertainment, but for them this is a job. This is how they set up their lives and their families. And so being able to maximize on that for life after cricket as well, because for me, I always sort of knew that cricket is great, like pretty much everything that I have has derived from cricket, but it also gave me the opportunity to meet people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cricket has given me everything. And so I think that it's great to see other cricketers start to look at things from that vantage point, where obviously cricket sort of opens up the doors for you to meet anyone across the world and give you the opportunity to then go on and do business and create generational wealth, as athletes across various other sporting sections have done, sort of NBA players, footballers, etc., because ultimately you're talking about cricketers are going a bit later now. So you're saying even if a guy retires at 40, you're still expected to have a life expectancy of up to 70. So you still got another 30 years to live. You can't live off of whatever money you've made in cricket up to 70. So you still have to find new ways of generating income. And once you're used to living at a certain standard or certain level, you want to at least be able to maintain that, if not continue to improve that standard of living as well.
Definitely. I think that, one thing that they'll get from America that we spoke about previously as well is obviously the lack of, and it was more of a negative side we spoke about, it was the lack of exposure that the T20 World Cup had had from a media outlet and from a sports outlet perspective. But what the Australians are doing over there is obviously giving them the opportunity to for that greater audience in that sporting environment that's out there as well. And I think that that's obviously something that will give them that profile to the real big outlets out there as well. So, it's good from my perspective to see that, because in terms of obviously benefiting them as individuals, it's going to benefit the sport as well, because obviously they will obviously push the avenues and the different media outlets and things. But I just hope that, I know that Cummins isn't coming over to the UK, because I know there's a white ball series over here, and I think they play Scotland for a little bit and then come here. I just hope he doesn't get any critics for missing that, because effectively they turned. I think Cricket Australia said he's been rested and stuff, which he doesn't owe Australia anything either. So in my opinion, he deserves that a bit of leniency towards missing a bit of cricket for being rested, because he's focusing on he's done a lot and he's over in America as well. So I think it's a real positive.
Yeah, I don't think there's any cricket critics to that at all. Their main focus is that Indian series in the home summer and then going into the T20 World Cup. So where you have a chance to rest your captain and your best bowler, that England series and Scotland series is neither here nor there for him. And obviously Australia as well will want to bring through a new generation of fast bowlers at some point, with Stark and Hazelwood still being on the tour. So Australia won't miss anything. Pat Cummins won't miss anything.
No.
And when he comes in, it will be a seamless transition anyway. So I think it's pretty well planned out from the Australian perspective there.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully as well, in terms of obviously the Major League perspective as well, is that they'll start to have that positive impact within America off the back of the USA success in terms of the T20 World Cup as well. So with the bigger names being over there as well, hopefully it'll naturally be a bit more awareness around the tournament as well, really, which will hopefully then help USA cricket overall as well.
Yeah, 100%. And then as you start seeing these guys becoming, I guess, more prominent investors as well into different American tech startups, that gets them into the rooms with different people. And that also drives the conversation as well as to, he's a professional cricketer. What's cricket? Maybe we'll bring you along to a game, that sort of thing. And then that sort of drives interest that way as well. So
of course it is.
Things like that are important as well, because that's bringing in high net worth, high connected people as well into the cricket ecosystem, and that's ultimately what we want to continue to drive the game forward.
No. In terms, obviously, I want to finish up a little bit by giving your prediction ahead of the third test. How do you see it going, though, to summarise?
It's interesting because I think from what I've heard, there are a few injuries within the West Indies camp, so I don't know.
Oh, right, okay.
How they go about it. I think, well, obviously, you look at Kevin Sinclair getting hit on the hand from Mark Wood. If that hand's not broken, his hand will never be broken again in life, because that was pretty nasty. But either way, if Gudakesh Moti is fit and raring to go, he comes back in for me.
Yep.
Shamar Joseph, in the first two test matches, left the field on multiple occasions, clutching his hamstring, whether that is or a strain or whatever the case is, I don't know. Obviously, as you mentioned, there's a lack of game time in his legs, and so coming into this series, that was going to be difficult for him. So we'll see whether he plays again, or if the team stays the same. I expect Kurt McKenzie to make room for Zach McCaskey as well. Kurt McKenzie's had a very lean time throughout domestic cricket and his international career thus far. He got selected, I guess, based on that best series last season. Yeah. But he hasn't really done much either side of that. And so I think he'll sort of make room for Zach McCaskey for this match in terms of a change. I don't see pretty much many other changes happening outside of those three potential slots. For England, I think they may try and rest Gus Atkinson and try Dylan Pennington and see what he can offer. The other seamer on the bench is, what's his name again? Matthew Potts.
Matthew Potts, yeah.
I'm not sure if they bring Potts back in for Chris Wokes. Chris Wokes seems to just be getting his legs back under him. Obviously bowled a lot in that test match. And obviously the more you bowl, the more rhythm you have going into that Sri Lanka series as well. And not being very active before this series, obviously because of personal grievances in his family.
Yeah.
The of his dad, I think. So that's completely understandable as well. But I think from an England standpoint, that would probably be the only change, whether they want to keep the fast bowling unit intact or whether they make some changes and try and blood some other players and see what they have to offer as well. I think there was also the potential option of Ben Duckett missing the test match because of his partner giving birth. So, I'm not sure if that's happened already. If not, it may still be something that does happen, and then you have a Dan Lawrence coming in up top. If not, then pretty much all will remain the same from England.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, I do see England coming out on top. I'll say unfortunately, obviously, but I would like to see a good I thought like a good competitive test match would be what I'd like to see anyway.
Yeah, I think the first 3 days of the last test match was what everyone wanted to see. High stakes, anyone could win.
Yeah.
Up to that time, even when England got dismissed in the second innings on day 4, it was still an open game, especially the way West Indies started with a quick half-century run, opening partnership, but then it sort of went downhill quickly from there. So I think the West Indies will continue to get better. Obviously, it's the last game of the series, and they're going to want to at least leave with some pride and continue to fight, maybe try and get the game into the 5th of the test match, and anything is possible. I think Edgbaston, the ball will do a lot more for the seamers though. And so it's going to be a situation of who catches better probably.
No, well, yeah, as you mentioned before. But yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been a good chat as always. And thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us on the PowettPlay Podcast, hosted by Kieran, Powell and Jordan Shannon. We hope you enjoyed this immersive dive into the world of cricket and business, exploring the unique experiences and perspectives of players past and present, alongside those invaluable insights into intriguing business themes that transcend beyond the boundaries of sporting heroics. Be sure to set your reminders on your Alexa or Google Home device. Or we won't tell anyone if you still use those paper calendar things from a bygone era. Join us next time for more inspiring dialogue with scintillating minds on the PowettPlay Podcast.